radio studio at the George Washington Broadcast Center. Jack Armstrong and Joe Getty. The Armstrong and Getty Show.
Does the U.S. military consider the Taliban an enemy?
We're our focus right now. The thing we're working against right now is time and space, and we want to get as many people out of Kabul as we can in as little amount of time as we can. There are no hostile interactions right now between American forces and the Taliban, and we want to keep it that way.
The communication coming out of the White House has just been all over the place this week. I'd say that John Kirby does a better job than anybody they've got. But he's in an unwinnable situation. Well, there's no good answers for this stuff. That's one of the problems you get up there if you're a Jen Psaki or a Joe Biden or whoever. There's no good answers for this. It's a debacle.
They're being asked to defend the indefensible in this case. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the recall election in the most populous state in the Union, California, and all sorts of stuff with Lan Hee Chen, David and Diane Steffi Fellow in American Public Policy Studies at the Hoover Institution, Director of Domestic Policy Studies at Stanford University. Lan Hee, how are you?
Hey, great to be back with you guys again.
You should have run for governor, man. You should have run for governor. It's a free-for-all. Nobody's really poking out. I mean, somebody's going to end up governor of this state with like 18% of the vote.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, because it is such a compressed time frame. I was thinking to myself, in a lot of countries, this is how they do elections. They give you like 30 days or 60 days, and that's it. And, in America, we have these big, long elections. We talked about this before, right, where we take years and years to figure out who the president's going to be. And here we have in California, which is, as you guys say, the biggest state in the country, we very well could have a new governor within less than a month. And this whole process, the actual process of this election, will have been fought over, basically 5 weeks. And it's kind of crazy to think about. But one of the things I do think is absolutely clear as we go on in this cycle is how frustrated people are with what's going on in California. I think there is a real and palpable frustration. This is not some made-up recall. This is not some made-up election. People are genuinely concerned about the future of our state, and I think we're seeing that now.
I had an interesting phone call yesterday from a friend who is part of a certain bureau in Washington, D.C., who said, I'm trying to convince my boss that it's worth us really taking a look at the California recall. And we had a conversation. I told him, I think it's absolutely possible to look at it as perhaps the crest of the blue wave on the West Coast as people see the chaos 100% Democrat rule has unleashed. Do you think there's any validity to that?
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of Democrats around the country are deeply concerned about what they see in California, because they realize that, in some ways the jig is up, whether it's in California. New York's a whole different set of problems. But in California, in Illinois, in states where we have seen prolonged periods of one-party rule, it results in it's something I call policy sclerosis, right? You sort of have the same kinds of ideas and the same kind of stuff gets tried over and over again, even if it's not working well. And I absolutely think that people on the East Coast, people around the country should pay attention. I think the angle that you've presented is absolutely right, which is that there is a great and deep sense that you can't keep doing the same things, getting poor results, and doing them over and over again. I think people in California are recognizing that.
I got to believe that Gavin Newsom thought he had an ace in the hole in that a relatively popular President Joe Biden would come out to the state when it got closer and campaign for him. But I don't think Joe Biden's going to be in any position politically to help the guy out.
Yeah, no, I don't think Biden is. I certainly don't think Kamala Harris is. She's the apparently by her own declaration, the architect of what's going on in Afghanistan, right? She's sort of the point person at the White House, point person of the administration on this. So, they can try to come out here. It's going to feel very tone deaf while we're seeing this debacle before our very eyes. And I do think that it creates an interesting political quandary for Gavin Newsom and for his allies. And that is, do you want to have a president whose popularity is cratering right now, an administration whose popularity is cratering because people are having real issues with the way the situation in Afghanistan is being handled? Do you want them to come out here in the heat of a recall election where it feels like they have mishandled it. The Newsom people have mishandled it from day one. They didn't take it seriously enough. They framed it the wrong way. Now they're trying to take it seriously. But people are just sort of over the politics as usual, I think.
Yeah, the whole it's QAnon or it's Trump or whatever. I'm not sure that's flying with anybody.
Yeah, nice try. It's not going to help old Gavi that half the state's on fire either. I mean, it's just there's a vibe of I don't know what would I describe it? A feeling of foreboding in the air. It's not going to help him.
Well, it's not also because let's not forget Gavin Newsom lied about the percentage of wildfire the potential wildfire brush that was cleared by the state, right? I mean, I think he overestimated the acreage by, I think it was 600%, if I recall the news reporting correctly. That number may be a little off, but somewhere in that range that the governor basically said, oh, look, we've done all this work to clear out all this brush that could potentially cause a significant wildfire. And as it turns out, he hasn't invested nearly as much in clearing wildfire and in doing the things that he needs to do in order to ensure that we're staying ahead of some of these challenges. And I think that's the issue that Gavin Newsom has. I think it's the issue that a lot of Democrats who run California have, which is that they have had several years to make investments in ensuring that some of the biggest problems we have in this state, whether it's drought, the wildfire situation, infrastructure, homelessness, public safety and crime, all these issues have unfortunately gotten worse under their watch. And they've had the opportunity to make investments to make things better, and they haven't. And now we're seeing the fruits of their labor. And I'll tell you, it's not pretty to see.
Lon He Chen's on the line of the Hoover Institution, Stanford University. Jack, do you have more on California, or do you want to get into Afghanistan a little bit? Lon He, as you watch the events unfolding, and the horror has certainly only just begun. Can the Biden administration even possibly bounce back from this?
Well, I mean, this is one of those things where, what you're seeing unfold before you, it's very, very difficult to turn your attention away from it because there's a human tragedy element to it where you see people, in my view, people in Afghanistan who have been extremely helpful or have tried to be helpful to our effort there, essentially being abandoned. You have Americans in Afghanistan who are having difficulty getting out. And then you just have the legacy of 20 years that we've been in Afghanistan, 20 years that we've been trying to fight this fight. And it all feels like it's crumbling away in a matter of weeks, days and weeks. It's not even months. I mean, recall that when we originally began this pullout, what we were told was that, we thought the Afghan army would be able to hold for 30 or 60 days. This is all crumbling before our eyes in a matter of days and weeks. And so that element of what we see right in front of us and how awful this administration has not only handled it, but the way that they've tried to explain it and then blame others for really what have been strategic miscalculations and failings of the current leadership in Washington. It's going to be tough for them, guys. I think they're really going to have to deal very seriously with this issue, not just now, but I think into next year. And I think it's interesting. We haven't had a national security focused election in some number of years. I wonder if 2022 is the year when more Americans say, we should think carefully about the decisions we're making given the national security implications of elections.
Okay, well, two things on that. One, I didn't know that I would ever see again in my lifetime the press take on their own the way they have with Joe Biden. CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, relentless. The Washington Post yesterday had 4 articles front page that I thought weren't even completely fair. I mean, all they did was find negative quotes from people. They didn't even offer any other. So, I mean, it was like Trump-like in their attack. So you got that combined with, so you got that end of it. But the polling shows people wanted to get out, showed before and after people wanted out. So how big a price do you expect him to pay? Are his approval ratings going to be in the 30s here in a couple of weeks, or will he weather this?
No, I mean, I don't think he'll get into the 30s. I think that he has a certain base of support, and I think there is a floor. I don't think it's in the 30s. I think the floor probably is somewhere in the 40s. Maybe he hits the low 40s, although I tend to think that there's a lot of people who, even with this, would probably want to give him the benefit of the doubt. What is absolutely certain to me, though, is that if you look at the commentary of this administration on this particular crisis, it's just obvious that they seem in over their head. And that is surprising to me, given that there are a lot of professionals in this administration, people who have been involved in policymaking, been involved in national security specifically for many, many years. And it's just baffling to me why the response has been as bad as it's been. Not just the policy response, guys. The policy response has been a disaster. But the way that they've talked about the policy response, the way that this administration has described it, boy, it's been an absolute debacle for them.
Well, the president's going to take one more whack at it later on today. We'll have that for you, whether on the show live or Monday. Lan Hee Chen, David and Diane Steffi Fellow in American Public Policy Studies at the Hoover Institution, Director of Domestic Policy Studies at Stanford University. Lan Hee, thanks for the time. Good to talk to you.
Hey, have a great day, guys.